Welcome to the Paisans podcast. We're your hosts, the brothers from other mothers, Dante, Dave, and Sark. Join us as we talk about current events, our wives, kids, or whatever else life is throwing at us this week. You're with the Paisans, you're with family.
We were going to talk about The Sopranos, but we ended up talking about all sorts of other really interesting stuff, Dave. I mean, because Joey just watched it. And
he finished
so,
it, right? Or no?
Yeah, he finally finished
Okay.
it. Yeah. So it is a good conversation, but I was really refreshed a lot watching parts of it with him. I was like doing a lot of this.
Oh, you rewatched it?
Well, Joey rewatched it. And so I a lot of times he's in the other room and he's watching it. I walk through and I'm like, oh, this is a great scene.
Yeah, of course. It's all coming back to you.
Oh, I just got to watch this part.
The only thing I'll say about that is like it still holds up. It's really good. It
does.
Probably
Does it?
Yeah. I don't want to. It might be my favorite HBO show. I don't know, but I also just watched it, so that could be why I'm thinking that. I mean, The Wire is also an amazing show that I loved. Just everything about The Sopranos was so good. I mean, the fact that it's like you're rooting for Tony Soprano, who's this like ruthless mobster, and he's like justifying a lot of these actions. He's like, I'm still a good guy.
Yep.
It's like,
yep.
Are you? It's like,
yes.
You're not a good guy, but I'm rooting for you. You know, even at the end, I'm just like rooting for him the whole time. You know.
Yep.
But yeah,
they do a good job of reminding you too that they're
he's not a good guy.
Yes. Yeah.
He does a lot of messed up stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, like I remember because I don't remember it that well. I'm sure if I saw the episodes again, it would all come back to me. But I remember like episodes where it seemed like the entire episode he's doing something good, and at the end of it, he'll just ruin the whole fucking thing and do something terrible.
Yeah. There was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Very self-destructive.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
The one episode that really, I don't know why this really stuck with me, but there's one episode where, the dude from the Terminator's in it, Robert from the Terminator 2, T-1000.
Robert Patrick?
Robert Patrick, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where he owns the sporting goods store. And when it's all said and done, he's just a degenerate gambler.
Yeah.
You know? And Tony warns him multiple times, like, you don't want in on this action. You don't want in on this action. And the guy insists. And then at one point, Tony falls asleep and he wakes up and all of a sudden he owes like thousands of dollars to Richie Aprile.
Yeah.
And you just watch him, and it's horrible to watch because you just watch his entire life implode.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, well, you owe us this money. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to walk into your business. We're going to leverage your company credit to buy a whole bunch of stuff. And we're going to leave you with the bill, you know, and we don't know how long we're going to keep draining it. We're going to take you below negative. We're going to take you below zero into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And it's your problem, not ours, because the bank's going to come to you for the money. And you're just like, damn. And at one point, Tony makes some comment like, this is my bread and butter. Like, this is how I make most of my money. You're like, how many people are in this? Like, holy God.
Oh, yeah.
And the funny thing, the whole interaction was his childhood friend, like some guy he grew up with. Even like when he was telling him, you don't want this action. Trust me, you don't want this action. You're like, oh, he's looking out for him. He's like, okay, you know what? That's fine. Like hits him on the shoulder, like, let's go have some fun. And it's like he's all of a sudden he's like $50,000 in debt, and Tony's like, by the way, there's a 2% vig on that.
Yep.
So it's like every week you don't pay me 2%'s tacked on. So and this again, this is his friend.
He told me not to get in the game. Why'd you let me do it? Well, I knew you had this business here, Davy. It's my nature. Frog and the scorpion, you know? Now, besides, if you would have won, I'd be the one crying the blues, right? What's the end? The end? It's planned bankruptcy. Hey, you're not the first guy to get busted out. This is how a guy like me makes a living. This is my bread and butter. When this is over, you're free to go. You can go anywhere you want. Oh, for Christ's sake.
There's a couple instances like that in that show where, you know, I was just thinking of one. It slipped my mind now. I can't remember which scene it is, but it's very similar where it's like, with Artie Bucco when Artie needs money at one point. And Tony's like, why didn't you come to me? And he's like, I didn't want to ask you. He's like, oh, yeah, you can have it. It's not. It's like $50,000. It's fine. No problem. He's like, by the way, you still owe me the VIG though. But it's like, and then like the whole thing with Artie like falls through, of course. So then Artie doesn't have his money, and Tony's like, you still owe me that money, by the way. Don't forget. It's just like have a good night, pal. So yeah, it's just such an interesting show. Just everything about it.
It's brilliantly written. It's so well conceived.
Yeah, very well written, and it still holds up. And I was just picking up on like small things, actors that I was seeing in the show that I was like, person. And it's like a lot of times it's the same people that you see in these same types of shows and movies.
Steve Buscemi.
Right, Steve Buscemi was in there for that one season. The guy who plays the guy at the end, the New York guy. I'm forgetting his name right now. But the guy with
Johnny
the
Sack.
No, not Johnny Sack. The guy who's after him.
Oh yeah.
I'm blanking on his name for some reason.
But he's the guy from
Casino.
He's in all those movies. Yeah.
He plays a mobster in all those movies.
Go get your shine box. He's the guy who says, "Go get your shine box."
Exactly.
To Joe Pesci.
Phil Leotardo.
Well, the one guy, Paulie.
That's it, Phil.
Wasn't that Paulie guy? He was like a real mobster at some point in his life, right? One of these guys was like a thug or something like that. I don't know if it was him or somebody else.
If there was anyone in that show, Paulie would be my guess, honestly.
Oh my gosh,
I think it was him.
He's
so.
I think Paulie was my favorite, man.
I think so. Character.
What a character.
He always laughs like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, Tone. And then with the S's, he has like this whistle in his S's sometimes. And you go, oh man, this guy. What a piece of work. Do you remember the episode where he goes to see the medium? And he thinks the guy claims like he can see the dead or like he's talking to the dead. And he's like immediately says to Paul, he's like, oh my gosh, he's like, get out of here. Like he makes some comment and then he at one point he's like, that one is laughing. Like he says something about Paulie because Paulie like starts to freak out or something. And he's like, this one is laughing.
I feel your anger.
Who the fuck are you talking to?
Charles. Yes, you have a son. You're with your son?
The fuck? I don't got no kids.
Oh, Sonny.
Pagano?
Kind spirit. Is your name Sonny? Charles Pagano.
How the fuck do you know that?
He says he was your first. But I feel many more.
Hey!
That one's laughing. Poison ivy? He wants to know if it still itches.
Don't fuck with me. Who you been talking to?
Paulie's like, what? And he picks up the chair. He curses everybody in the room. He picks up the chair and he throws it against the wall. And he like, the guy's basically like, please leave and never come back.
That's what this is, Satanic black magic. Sick shit.
I'm asking you to leave, sir.
Yeah? Fucking quiz!
He's like terrified. It's like, of all the guys on the show, Paulie somehow, like, and I'm not spoilers, but like Paulie sustains through all of it. And yet here's this sort of thing hanging over him that just sort of says, don't think that he's beyond judgment. It's like Paulie has maybe the worst fate of anybody waiting for them. Mm-hmm. What he does to his that woman who raised him is just,
yes,
it's gut wrenching. It's so hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's so hard to watch.
Yeah, because these guys become lovable, and then you're reminded again, like they're
right.
awful. They're evil people.
You're right. There was the one episode after he finds out that his mother wasn't his real mother, that there's like the kid whose mother, some guy dies and the kid inherits the estate or something, and like somehow the father was involved with them in some way. And then so the kid's trying to get out of it and get legit. And there's some scene where his mother basically comes and begs them to leave them alone and begs Paulie like to leave her son alone. And it's like that alone sets Paulie off. And then Paulie's like got it out for the kid. He like breaks his leg when the kid's going to do rowing or something. Do you remember that? Oh my gosh. It's awful. Talk about, it was just so psychologically good because you're watching and you know exactly why Paulie is doing it. He's just he's just jealous. You know, he's just jealous, and he's not smart enough to direct his anger appropriately, and so he just decides to beat up on this young kid because this kid dares to have a mother who loves him. Damn.
Isn't it amazing too? Like, because that show, we've said it before, but like how it's really just grounded in psychology. I mean, the fact that they're mobsters makes it interesting, and the problems that they're presented with are unique, but a lot of them are just the same types of problems that anybody is experiencing. It's just in a different way, in a different context. I love that. It's not so, I mean, and you're right to the point what David Chase, the guy who wrote it, the knowledge of the mob to make it accurate and believable, the knowledge of the psychology element, which is definitely like very in depth and very metaphorical in so many of the episodes. And then growing up or being Italian in Jersey, because it's so specific to Jersey Italians. All those three things make it amazing, right? Because you're right. I mean, to do all that right, it's pretty awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he got so many of the little nuances right about how they talk, the words they used.
Yes.
And, you know, I don't know, Dave, if it reminded you, but for me, definitely like on Dad's side, like the uncles and stuff, just it just reminded me the way it was just so accurate. I mean, was some stuff played up? Sure.
Yeah, of course.
But generally speaking, a lot of the subtle stuff they really got.
Yeah,
you know?
they got. Yeah.
They all kissed one another all the time.
Yep.
Every time they were leaving, they always had to like just little things, and you're like, "That's exactly
espressos,
what it was."
Drinking the espressos,
Just-
reading the paper.
And they all have mistresses. That was one of the funny,
wow,
the funniest part to me is like the gumad is or whatever it's called, the gumada or whatever. It's just like a known thing. Like Carmela talks about it. She's like, I put up with that gumada stuff, you know. And it's like, and they all have one, and it's like it's all known. It's just like we're gonna hang out with our girlfriends. Like we're all gonna hang out with our girlfriends together. Our wives are not. Gonna
That's
be
right.
there.
Yep.
And they all have one. You know, just and then like the whole thing with Bobby Bacala was that he didn't have. He was the one guy who didn't have one, and that's why Tony's sister liked him, or that's why she was claiming she liked him.
Gosh, I didn't really. Yeah, that's a subtle detail. I didn't remember that part about Bobby Bacala.
Yeah, he was like the quote unquote good guy, you know, and because Janice was going through the whole another scene where she was going to therapy, and the therapist was like breaking through with her, and she was like, well, why do you always date these men that work with your brother when you know they're dangerous? She's like, oh yeah, you're right. And then the next time she goes, she's like, so I'm seeing I'm interested in a new man. And she's like, the therapist is like, oh great, where'd you meet him? He's like, he works for my brother. And then she's like, I thought we talked about this, Janice. She's like, no, he's different. He's the only one who doesn't have like a gumad, you know. Like, and it's like it's a known thing. Like everyone knows Bobby doesn't have one. Like it.
Oh my god.
One of the reasons that had us watch this. I mean, I've always been interested, right? It's always been on my list. But a friend of ours, like 2-3 months ago, sends us a Instagram link, and the Somerset Patriots, which is the Yankees minor league affiliate, they're having a Sopranos night, and Steve Sciarippa's going to be there. So like that was like part of like almost like buddy's wife sent this to us, and I was like, we should watch it so we understand that we could go to Sopranos night at Somerset Patriots. But that was like kind of the motivation. But so yes, he must be local because I think he's going to be the only one that's going to be there too. So he must still be local.
Oh, cool. He's from out here, and I think they had an episode or a couple episodes of The Sopranos where they showed his house, and he had like remember the train set in the garage, right? He was being that's real. He has these giant trains in his house. Yeah, he's like a big, model train collector. And they did a lot of things like that in the show, where they would film things that were real or like actually part of these people's lives, which was pretty neat.
That is cool.
I do think they filmed a lot in New Jersey, New York. Like they didn't use sets because even in the opening intro, I just saw something. There's a shot of a pizza place called Pizza Land, and I saw something on Instagram or something. They went to Pizza Land to try the pizza because they're like, oh, this is the famous Pizza Land from the Sopranos intro. It's somewhere in New Jersey. Yeah, it's just like some pizza place in New Jersey. I don't even think it's like some great pizza. I think it was just like some average pizza place that just happened to be in the shot that they were filming.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, I mean, the way that it's filmed in certain sequences, like the idea that Tony's driving, like the shots that they have are totally not. It's not as if he would really see these things wherever it is that he's like in his area. But I think to your point, Dave, they're more just to try and represent New Jersey.
Yes.
And Pizza Land sounds very much like something you'd see in Jersey. Although I think that sounds that way more to people who would be like outside of this country. I'm sorry, outside of the state. Whereas in state, you'd expect it to be like Vito's Pizza or like, Sal's Pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the intro, he's like, I think he's crossing into the city or he's leaving the city, right? Because you see him going through like the toll plaza.
Yeah, he's leaving the city to come back home to his
come back home.
He pulled
right?
the last shot of the intro is him pulling into the driveway,
which definitely looks like Jersey too. The house and up in the hills like that. Yeah,
that house looks like it's in Jersey for sure.
Yeah.
Great show, man. It's a great show, and it really is worth, like you said, Dave. It still holds up, so it's the kind of thing you could go back in a few years and say, I'm going to rewatch it and remind myself why it was so good.
I got to do that. I got to watch it again. I haven't.
It really is worth it.
Original.
Really?
Oh, okay.
You watched it when it came out, and you haven't seen it since.
Yeah. I watched them all like as they came out. I don't think I ever even watched an episode over again, so I haven't seen it in a long time.
Oh wow!
It's 90s.
You
like,
would definitely enjoy it if you could. And I don't know if your sons have any interest, but you could do the opposite of what my dad did because he wouldn't let me watch it when I was a kid. It's
watched
kind of
it.
Funny. Oh, he watched it, yeah. But
he watched it.
So that's why I was aware of it. Like I even knew some of the characters because he'd be watching it downstairs. I'd come downstairs or something. I'd see like Adriana, for example. Like I always remembered her from when I was a little kid.
Yeah, and I would too.
Right, which Christopher is like, he's actually just like such a menace. It's just like.
Oh yeah.
There's just a one scene where him and Adriana get into a fight because there's a spoiler alert. I mean, it's been 25 years, so I don't know if we're really spoiling anything at this point. But there's one season where feds try to infiltrate Adriana, so they send some girl.
Oh yeah.
And she befriends her, and then they find out she's a fed,
and the girl is smoking hot.
Right, so Christopher's like attracted to her, and at one point he like tries to make a move on her. He's trying to get her and Adriana, and Adriana catches him, and she's like, "What were you doing?" And it's like I joked to Danielle, I was like, "This is the first time that someone was ever gaslit in the history of life." Where he's just like, "This is where the term gaslighting came from," because she was like caught him red-handed, and he was like, just basically just lying to her the whole time. He's like, "That came onto me. What are you talking about?" And then Adriana's like, "You said she had a nice ass." And then he's like, "She's trying to say something nice because she's your friend."
She came on to me. She took my hand. She was rubbing it on herself.
Bullshit!
Yeah? How about right before you came over? She was telling me where she buys her pants, her fucking underwear and shit, fucking BBs, like I give a fuck.
Thought you said she was gay.
Who knows what her problem is? Use your head, huh? What do I want with that skank when I got you?
You were saying she had a nice ass.
I was trying to say something positive because she's your friend.
The funny thing is like she ends up believing him, and like she totally buys it, and it's just
well,
funny.
she always ends up forgiving him, right? That's right. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, it's again a psychological. I mean, like every character is so well thought out psychologically. What they do makes perfect sense. It's just like wow.
Tony's going to therapy, talking about his issues, which in that world is like, the whole first few seasons, it's like he's hiding the fact that he's going to therapy from the rest of the guys. But then I actually like the part where the therapist is going to therapy to talk about him. And
that's
just
right.
That dynamic. And then how that kind of evolves through the timeline of the show is really kind of interesting too, where her therapist is kind of a jerk, honestly. Like he's just like
he's like not helpful at all, really.
No, he's not helpful, and he blows up her spot about it, and it's like he makes it a big joke. And meanwhile, she's like having this internal struggle of trying to save this mobster, even though it's like she's risking her life, kind of. So yes,
when she's like, isn't she empathizing also because she's Italian?
Yes.
Right, she's like going back to her roots, so there's like this connection that she can't keep away from.
There's often this debate going on between like she's sort of like educated and her ex-husband is super educated, and they're always talking about how the Sopranos are like they make such a bad name for Italians.
Right.
They're both Italian and they're very well educated, and it's implied that they're a little snooty. You know what I mean? Like everything with them, they're listening to classical music and they're sipping wine, and it's always like elegant.
Yes.
And they're having intellectual conversations about things, in contrast to the Sopranos, you know. So,
But then there's also an element too from her where she's attracted to him. You know, there's like that whole thing where she finds him attractive. She thinks he's this big alpha, so like she's like, kind of torn, and you know, and then he has feeling for her at some points, and then it's just like really kind of messy and not almost like a toxic.
But everything with him is like that whole mother thing too, right?
Oh,
It's always
so
going
much.
back to his mom, and the therapist is sort of like the mother figure to him.
Very similar to what what we saw growing up in terms of like the relationship between like the mother and the son, right? Like, I mean, in terms of like what our dad dealt with, and like it's very similar. Like every time I saw something like that on TV when I was a kid, like Everybody Loves Raymond, for example, the mother on that show, like Dad would always be like, "This is just like your grandmother. This is just like your grandmother," and you're watching The Sopranos, and Olivia Soprano is just like her.
she was evil though. Like Olivia Soprano was like genuinely. I mean, goodness gracious, you know, she's basically saying like, "Put a hit out on my son."
Right. Yes. At one point, yes. Yeah, she was, like that. And it's just an interesting dynamic, too, because at the end of the day, Tony ends up idolizing his mobster father. You know, it's like that was his role model growing up, and his mother was the one that he turned against. But even Janice is also against the mother in some ways, too.
Yeah.
Guess what, Ma? I got great news. Tony's not going to sell the house. And when you get released, we're going to take you back home.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to live with you.
Why? So you cannot resuscitate me?
So I can what?
Oh, I've seen that movie with Richard Widmark.
Movie, Ma?
Oh, Mrs. Soprano.
No, take this one. Yeah, she gets her ballet shoes, she sells them, and she takes the money to Newark, and she buys amphetamines.
She was a child then. I think you should go live with your daughter, Mrs. Soprano.
Well, I think I'm gonna leave all my money to you, honey.